In a distant corner of the galaxy, a new Halo ring, one of the ancient superweapons of the mysterious Forerunner civilization, is found, and the battle sparks anew. Brave humanity battling for survival and discovery against the Covenant alliance of an alien species who worship the long-absent Forerunners. And looming terrifying above both of these factions is a parasite flood infection which threatens to corrupt all living creatures into mindless creatures of violence and rage. Which faction will triumph in this legendary new front in the battle for the Halo universe? That, players, is up to you. Today we're taking a look at Risk Halo Legendary Edition. In the box you get a rulebook, 2 double-sided boards. This one here is called the ring map, and you can connect these 2 boards like so to play a game for 3 to 5 players. On the flip side, we have 2 other maps. The first one here is called the Anvil map. This map is for 2 players. The other option for 2-player game is the Hammer map, which is on the flip side of this board. There are 3 factions in the game: UNSC, the Covenant, and the Flood. The box comes with 2 armies of UNSC and 2 armies of the Covenant. The box also comes with 1 army for the Flood. You'll also find faction cards for each of the factions. These are the campaign cards. There are 3 types: Easy, Heroic, and Legendary. Finally, there are 5 sets of mobile teleporter tokens and 5 dice. There are 4 game modes. In this video, we'll focus on the one-on-one 2-player mode. First, choose to play on the Hammer map or the Anvil map. The map is divided into regions which have different color schemes. This is a region, this is another region. Within each region, there are little territories which are separated by these colored lines. This is a territory, this is an adjacent territory. Take out a Covenant army and a UNSC army, and then each player picks a side. In this 2-player game, we'll also use the Flood, and they'll act as neutral faction that occupies the board. In this particular mode, the Flood is passive and is unable to attack or move. It will act as roadblocks for the UNSC player and the Covenant player. For each army, you get a bunch of units. There are 36 of these smaller units. In the case of the UNSC, these are called the Marines. There are also these stronger units, the tanks. There were 3 units each, so they're equivalent to 3 of the Marines. You also have a hero and a base. For the 2-player game, you need 30 units from the army. So take out 30 of these little guys and leave out these tanks for now. Later in the game, you can trade 3 of these for each of the tanks. Also, you'll need a hero and a base. Each player will get one of these sets of mobile teleporter tokens. You need to set aside 48 Flood neutral units. The game comes with these little guys, which are called the infection forms, and somewhat larger units. They're called carrier forms. Carrier forms, again, are worth 3 of these infection forms. So for the one-on-one game, you'll need 48 units. There are actually 36 of these, and 18 more of these. To add up to 48, you'll probably need 36 of these, and then 6 of these units that are worth 3 each, for a total of 48 units. You won't be needing the base or the hero of the Flood form, so you can pack the rest of these back into the box for now. Next, set out the campaign cards. There are 3 types: Easy, Heroic, and Legendary. For the purpose of the 2-player game, you'll only play with cards that has this 2 dot symbol. So go ahead, go through the cards, and remove the cards that do not have the symbol, like this one. So that's gone from the game. This card is gone from the game. And these cards are gone from the game. Give the cards a good shuffle. and then deal 1 card of each difficulty to each player. The remaining cards can now go back into the box. Grab the faction decks, 1 for the Covenant, 1 for UNSC, give them a good shuffle, and then place it on the side of the board. Each player then rolls 1 die to determine turn order. The person with the higher number is the first player. The first player will set his or her mobile teleporter token onto the board. It must be placed in 2 territories that are not connected. These tokens now create a permanent connection between the 2 territories and are considered adjacent to each other. The second player will then put his or her teleporter token onto the board as well. But note that the teleporter token cannot be placed into the same territory as another token. We'll now start placing units onto the board. The first player will claim the first territory by taking 1 unit and his or her faction space and place it onto an empty territory on the board. Player 1 now controls this territory. Player 2 then does the same in an empty territory of his or her choosing. And now this territory is claimed by player 2. Next, player 1 will pick 2 of these neutral units and place them on an empty territory. This territory is now controlled by the neutral flood unit. And then player 1 proceeds back to place 1 of his units on an empty territory. And player 2 does the same. But this time, after player 2 places his or her unit, it's player 2's turn to take 2 of the neutral units and place it on an empty territory on the board. So the players will actually alternate placing the neutral units onto the board. If in doubt, you can consult page 4 of the rulebook, which has a reference table of how you can place units onto the board. Players will continue taking turns placing units on the board like so, until all territories on the board are claimed. Now that all territories are claimed, you will reinforce them. Players continue to place units as described earlier, but the only difference is that the 2 flood units do not have to be deployed onto the same territory each round. They can be divided into 2 separate flood control territories. So these 2 units that one of the player will place can be separated like so. Keep placing units until all starting units, as well as neutral flood units, have been placed. There is no limit to the number of units that can be placed in a territory. You can choose to reinforce 1 territory with a large number of units, or you can spread them across all your territories. After all starting units are placed, each player places his or her hero miniature in any territory he or she controls. So let's say the UNSC player will place the hero here, and the Covenant will place the hero here. This concludes the setup for the game. To win the game, be the first faction to complete all 3 campaign card objectives, or eliminate all opposing units on the board. Player 1 takes the first turn. On your turn, you can deploy reinforcements, attack enemies, collect campaign cards, and draw faction cards. Let's talk about deploying reinforcements. At the start of your turn, you will get to add more units onto the board to reinforce your army. The way you do this is you count the number of territories that you control. So in the case of the purple player here, he or she controls 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 territories. Divide this number by 3, and that would be the number of reinforcements that you get. 10 divided by 3 is 3 with a remainder of 1. You would want to ignore the remainder. So purple player will get to grab 3 reinforcement units. If after you divide the number is lower than 3, you round it up to 3. So even if you have, say, 6 territories, 6 divided by 3 is 2, you would still grab 3 units and put them onto the board. But that's not all. If you control every territory within a regional color group, you control that color group. So for example here, gray controls every single territory within this color group. And so gray would be able to grab additional reinforcements equivalent to this number here. Notice that every color group has a key here on the side of the board that tells you how many reinforcements you would get. You also gather 1 unit for every base that you control, including your own. Add that number of units to your reinforcements. I'll explain how to get these faction cards in a minute, but you can also turn in faction cards for reinforcements. At the bottom of the faction card, there are these skull symbols. And you can choose to use these skulls to get additional reinforcements. So let's say this player decides to turn in these 2 cards for reinforcements. Add up the total number of skulls, and then refer to the index chart on the game board to see how many reinforcements you would get. So in this case, with 3 skulls, this player will get 4 additional units. The player may choose to turn in more skulls for more units. To summarize, at the beginning of your turn, you get reinforcement units equivalent to the number of territories that you control divided by 3, ignoring any remainders. Add any regional bonuses that you get from controlling the colors, and you would refer to the index for each of the colors to see how many units that you would get. Add 1 for each base that you control. Add faction cards, looking at the number of skulls and trading them in for additional units. And then that total number is the bunch of new units that you get to put onto the board. So go ahead now and deploy them onto the board. You can put all of these units into 1 territory or spread them out across your territories. If your hero was defeated in the last turn, you can also take the time now to redeploy it during this turn. After deploying units, you can attack your enemies. You can invade adjacent enemy territories in an attempt to take them over. Let's say the gray player wants to invade this adjacent territory. First of all, the gray player would select 1 unit to stay behind and guard the territory. The remaining units can invade the enemy territory, and the defender chooses how many units it will defend, and it can be 1 or 2 units. Let's say the purple player decides to defend with 2 of his units. Each side rolls 1 die for each unit in the battle. So in this case, gray will have 2 units, 2 dice, and the defender, purple, will get 2 dice as well for the 2 units that are defending. So each side will go ahead and roll the dice. Compare the highest die to the opponent's highest die. So in this case, purple had a great roll. Purple's highest die is 6, and gray's highest die is 4. Since 6 is greater than 4, purple has won this particular battle, and the loser has to remove 1 unit from the board. For the second die, again, you compare the next highest. In this case, it's 6 versus 2. Again, purple wins, and once again, gray takes a unit from the board and remove it. If there is no die to compare to, meaning one side roll more dice than the other, you would ignore the remaining dice. So let's say gray actually had 4 units in this area here. Gray left 1 to guard the territory and committed 3 of these units to attack purple. And let's say once again purple defends with 2 units. And so in this case, gray would get to roll 3 dice. So let's give them a roll. Again, you take the highest die and compare them. 5 versus 5. In a tie, the defender wins. In this case, purple once again wins this battle. Gray has to remove 1 unit from the board. Next, you compare the second highest die, 3 and 1. And finally, gray wins 1 battle. So purple needs to remove 1 unit from the board. Now notice that gray still has 1 die, but since the defender has no more die to compare to, this is just ignored. At the end of the invasion, if the defending side still has units in the territory, the attacker may attack again. The attacker can also attack new adjacent territories. If the defender has no more units on the board, congratulations, you have just conquered new territory. Move your attacking units into the new territory. Remember, you cannot move this remaining unit because it has to guard the territory. You may also move in additional units from the attacking territory. So let's say if you started with a lot more units in this territory, although you can only commit 3 maximum to the fight, after you've won the battle, the remaining units can also move into the new territory. Note that you can only attack with maximum 3 units at a time, and defenders defend with maximum 2 units. Let's talk about the heroes. Each player has one of these hero managers, and heroes possess elite skills in both attack and defense that can turn the tide of the battle. Heroes do not represent a unit in their own right, so they must always move with another unit. What heroes do is that they add 1 point to the highest attack or defense die rolled from the territory the hero currently occupies. Let's take a look at an example. Gray has a hero unit along with these 3 marines. Gray decides to attack purple. Gray leaves behind 1 marine unit and then commits these 2 marines to attack purple. Now again, the hero does not count as 1 unit, so gray only gets to roll 2 dice. Purple defends with 2 units, so purple will roll 2 defending dice. They'll go ahead and let's say they rolled this result. Normally, comparing the highest die roll, both players got the 5. And in this case, in normal case, the defender would win ties. So purple would actually win this particular battle. However, because the hero is present, he can actually turn this die into a 6, allowing gray to win this battle. Gray would then have to remove a unit from the board and we'll then compare the second highest die, which is 4 and 1. And so gray wins and purple removes this unit from the board. The hero only adds 1 to the highest die rolled, so the hero cannot add 1 to, say, the 4. It has to be the 5 to make it a 6. Since gray has won the battle and there are no more defending units on the board, he can or she can move the units into the new territory. If your hero is defending, so let's say purple is attacking gray here, and let's say purple defeats all the units here, the hero is also removed from the board with that unit. If they're defeated, heroes may be redeployed at the start of your next turn to any territory you control. If you're attacking a neutral flood unit, your opponent rolls defense. These neutral flood units will stay on the board until eliminated. The neutral flood unit does not move, they do not get reinforced, and they do not attack. A quick tip before we continue. You want to protect your base since you cannot win unless it is occupied with your own units. If the opposing enemy occupies a territory with your base, you cannot win the game. You have to regain control of your base in order to win. After you finish attacking, look at the campaign cards that are in your hand. You are dealt 3 cards during setup, 1 for each level. If you have completed one of these objectives during your turn, you have accomplished that campaign card. Accomplish all 3 to win the 2-player game. Note that only 1 campaign card can be accomplished per turn, even if more than 1 is eligible. You must choose which card to accomplish. When you accomplish a campaign card objective, reveal it to the rest of the players. When you accomplish your second campaign card objective and have only 1 left, you must reveal the last card so that the other players can see it. This card remains revealed for the rest of the game. If you conquered at least 1 enemy territory on your turn, you get to draw a faction card. Draw it off the top of the deck that matches your unit's faction and add it to your hand. Note that you only get to draw 1 faction card per turn, even if you conquered multiple territories. The faction card's color text tells you when you can play this card. The white text below it tells you what the card does. The skulls at the bottom allow you to gain additional reinforcements. You may play multiple cards per turn. You must choose to either use the ability or save multiple cards to cash in skulls and gain reinforcements. You cannot do both. After a card is used, it is placed into a discard pile. When the faction deck is depleted, shuffle the discard pile and form a new deck. Note that if you've collected a campaign card in a particular turn, you cannot draw a faction card that turn. Mobile teleporters help connect 2 separated game boards or increase maneuverability on 2-player hammer or anvil battlefields. Territories with the same number of mobile teleporter tokens are considered connected, and normal attacking and moving rules apply. So 1 here is connected to the 1 there. These mobile teleporters are shared, meaning all players may utilize them even if their opponent places them on the battlefield. After you've accomplished any of these campaign card objectives for that turn, and/or drawn any of these faction cards for claiming territories, you will approach the end of your turn. And at this point, you can utilize 1 move. Take as many units as you would like from one of your territories and move them to 1 other connected territory. Remember to leave at least 1 unit behind. Territories are connected if all the territories in between them are also controlled by you. So this territory is connected to this territory, and I could have moved this unit to here. You cannot pass through any enemy territory. Remember, territories with these mobile teleporters are considered connected. So this territory is connected to this territory, and I could have moved this unit to here, and then if I want, down here, because this is also a connected territory. This end of turn movement is not an attack. It is a movement from one of your territories to another in order to protect your front line or to get into position for your next turn. Moving units is optional.